Lex Fridman has just published what I believe to be the worst episode of his podcast ever, an interview with filmmaker Oliver Stone, who's come out in this interview as extremely pro-Russian and as a Putin's apologist. Before we start, I'm just going to ask you, please subscribe if you want more kind of a breakdowns that you will see in this video, and share this video, because I think it's going to be quite important, because there are a lot of lies that were spread and propagated by Lex Fridman and Oliver Stone. So yeah, I would really appreciate if you subscribe and share this video. Okay, I will play the clips from this interview and then I'm gonna pause it and discuss it. So apologize in advance for a little bit of a rambling sort of type of the video. Let's go.
Why do you think he did it? So here, is it madness or is it
No, it's not madness.
Strategic calculation?
Perhaps Mr. Putin has had this cancer, and I think he's licked it, but he's also been isolated because of COVID. Perhaps he lost touch with contact with people.
It's gonna be really hard to comment on this clown fest of an interview, but let's go. So first thing you do, if you beat presumably cancer, and after you spend some time in isolation, the next logical thing to do, according to Oliver Stone, is to invade another country. Brilliant logic, right? No flaws whatsoever here. Right, let's continue.
Perhaps he thought in his mind that there would be a faster resolution.
Okay, just so we speak the same language, faster resolution would mean in this case that Russia actually captures Ukraine. So Russia invading Ukraine and capturing it quicker would have been alright, according to Oliver Stone, and no problems whatsoever with this, right? We're living in 2022. No problems whatsoever with giant country invading another country and capturing it, as long as it's done quickly. Super logic. Okay, continue.
See, what people don't understand is that Ukraine, since 2014, has been a terror state. They've been run. Anytime a Ukrainian has expressed any understanding of the Russian-Ukrainian position, they've been threatened by the state.
There's so much wrong on so many levels with this particular clip that I will try to dissect it a little bit more. First of all, let's start with, since 2014, Ukraine has been a terrorist state. Can you hear when I'm saying this, right? What kind of an absolute brain-dead shit it is. Ukraine has had how many presidents? Let's count since like 1990, whatever, 4. Kuchma, Yushchenko, Yanukovych, Poroshenko, now Zelenskyy. That's 5. That's 4 more than Putin's Russia has had. So this is a terrorist state. It fucking pisses me off so much that this moron can even say these things, and Lex Fridman says zero thing to push back. By the way, let's quickly address why Maidan has happened. It's because this pro-Russian president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, he decided at the very kind of last second to not sign European Union and Ukraine association agreement, which would allow Ukraine maybe in the future join European Union, etc., but in general be closer to the West, to the European countries, rather than kind of all the time be in the sphere of influence as it was of Russia. Ukrainian people wanted to be closer to Europe. Yanukovych, because he was heavily influenced by Moscow, by Kremlin, did not do it. He was doing what he was told by his overseers. People revolted, we got Maidan, and what did Putin do in the meantime? He annexed Crimea. That's also fine according to Oliver Stone, because he somehow forgets that 2014 didn't start with nothing. There was Maidan, there was civil sort of unrest uprising against very corrupt president who did not actually basically represent people, who did not represent the people's will, and he got ousted. Now, Oliver Stone, please explain how and why is this Russian's business? Who is the president in Ukraine? And why he got basically out of the office? Why did people basically showed him vote of no confidence? Why is it suddenly Russians' business? Because it is not, spoiler alert.
from 2014 to 2022, there's been a set of hideous murders that people don't even know about in the West. Journalists, people who speak out, liberals.
Funny how if I would just show you this clip without any context, you would easily believe that Oliver Stone is talking about Russia, because this is exactly what's been happening in Russia right now, and since basically 2000 and about 16 or something like that, 2000 maybe 12 even. Basically opposition is being jailed, is being killed, journalists are being prosecuted, independent media are being shut down under some really bogus kind of pretenses. Boris Nemtsov was killed basically on the Red Square in front of Kremlin. What, you telling me that just some unknown just did it and cameras didn't work suddenly, and there was a truck blocking the view or something like that of one camera that worked? Seriously, all of that? And then obviously the main face of the opposition, Alexei Navalny, was also obviously first of all tried on some case, was tried to put to jail basically. Didn't really work. Then he was assassinated, basically poisoned. And now he was stupid enough to actually go back to Russia and still fight for Russia, for opposition and whatnot, for better future of Russia. And now he's in jail. So if you don't know that, you would be mistaken what Oliver Stone is talking about. But he somehow talks that this was happening in Ukraine. I don't understand why this man's saying what he's saying, if he is just an old, absolutely decrepit, delusional man, or does he have some sort of other motives? Is he being like a puppet basically of Kremlin right now? Because what he's saying is extremely dangerous, because it is pure lies. This is not true, or at least what he just said in this segment that I just showed you is exactly what describes Russia and not Ukraine.
People who I interviewed Viktor Medvedev, who they make out to be some kind of horrible person, but Medvedev was a very important figure in the administration of Kuchma, the first.
It is true. Medvedchuk was a really important person for Putin, because Putin is the godfather of Medvedchuk's youngest daughter. If you think things like this happen out of nowhere, well, Mr. Oliver Stone, you should actually use your brain a little bit. Because obviously Medvedchuk was doing his job. He was trying to influence politics in Ukraine to be kind of a more pro-Russian, or at least open to the Russia. And he was doing it kind of using sort of soft skills, if you will. And he was doing fine job, because he had 13% in the parliament of Ukraine, which is quite a lot for a pro-Russian party, basically. Just prior to this war, basically. And if Putin did not invade, who knows what might have happened.
Ukraine used to be before 2014. It was neutral from 1991 to 2014. Neutral, very important.
Ukraine was neutral relative to Russia prior to 2014. And then it started to become not neutral after Russia invaded the country of Ukraine and stole really giant portion of it, Crimea Peninsula. Oliver Stone, do you understand what you're talking about? 2014 was when Russia stole Crimea, annexed Crimea. That's exactly when Ukraine started to realize who they're dealing with. And they cannot be neutral anymore. If I come into your house and I steal, I don't know, your kitchen, your garage, your freaking bedroom, I don't know, and then I stay there and then I tell you that, oh, it's mine. If I do this, would you be happy about it? Would you be neutral?
The moment he got into office, I'm convinced that the militant sector of the right sector parties of Ukraine let him know that you will not make a deal with Russia. There'll be no concessions to Russia. This is very dangerous. This is where this attitude that's very, very hostile to Russia has hurt us. The whole world is being hurt by this. And no one calls them out. No one calls them out.
So he's talking about the President Zelenskyy right now. And just so you know and understand how much of an absolute brain-dead moron Oliver Stone is in this interview. He says that right-wing parties basically are telling Zelenskyy that he's not going to make any concessions to Russia and not going to do anything with Russia. While Zelenskyy on 23rd or like 24th February 2022 was telling to USA, please stop like scaring our people. We're dealing with Russia, we're dealing with everybody, and you are constantly telling us that there's going to be a war, that Russia is about to invade you. Zelenskyy was telling this. And the second thing that you need to know is that in parliament of Ukraine, basically in Ukrainian Rada, they had one nationalist like party, and they had one parliamentarian representing that party. One single person out of 450. One person. So, again, what is Oliver Stone saying? That this one person, nationalist person, by the way, they're not Nazis, and nationalism and Nazism should be separated, which apparently Oliver Stone does not separate anymore. While I believe there might have been some Nazis in that party, it's still not Nazi party, and Ukrainian parliament never was run by Nazis. No matter how much Russian propaganda spreads this bullshit, there was one representative, one single person out of 450 that represented, even if you can put it like that, nationalistic party. Single person. And once again, just so we all clear on what Oliver Stone is doing, he's blaming Ukrainians that they didn't give any concessions to Russia, who annexed their territory, who were supporting separatists in Donbass and Lugansk regions, who were supplying weapons there. Russia, who was fueling this conflict. If not for Russia, there wouldn't be no conflict in the east of Ukraine. That's for sure. Nobody ever said anything about Russian language in Ukraine prior to 2014, and then prior to 2022. People wanted to speak their own language. Fine, that is Ukrainian language. Russian language wasn't national language, but it was okay to speak Russian. I did it when I visited Ukraine. Nobody ever said anything. There would be no conflict whatsoever in east of Ukraine, if not for Russia and Russia-backed separatists. And yet he's blaming Ukrainian people. Just think about what this moron is saying. Just think with your own brain what he's saying. He's saying that I robbed you, and you punched me while I was robbing you and I was trying to rape you. But you hurt me so much. The whole world right now is hurting because I was robbing you, I was trying to kill you, and you punched me in the face. Yet instead you should have given me everything. Yeah, give me keys of your freaking flat and all of that shit. What kind of a brain-dead, senile imbecile that is. Oliver Stone, for fuck's sake.
By the way, among those people who've been ruined by this war, you have to include the 2014 to 2022 Ukrainian Russians. 14,000 were killed, not necessarily by some of them by maybe accident and this and that, but certainly a large number of that is responsible to the Ukrainian military and the Nazi-related battalions who have done a good job of death squatting.
When he speaks about 14,000 of dead people, casualties in the war since 2014, he somehow forgets that, first of all, that was a lot of those deaths were 2014 and 15 when the conflict and the battle was going on. And the battle was going on between Ukraine and its armed forces and separatists, absolute scumbags who were armed by Russia. I don't know how many people of Russia were present on those territories, but because we know right now what the Russian occupants did in Bucha, in many other cities in Ukraine, those 2,000, 4,000, 2,000 and in 14 and 1,000, around 1,000 deaths in 2015, civilian deaths, could have been all done by Russian scumbags or by separatists armed by Russia. You don't know. I don't know. So, in the spirit of the trial that is going on between Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, you would say hearsay, because you don't know how many people were killed by which side. And it would be really stupid of Ukrainian army to go into those territories and actually kill its own civilians. On the other hand, the scumbags and the separatists who got hold of weapons, or even if it was even better, if it was just Russians who were fighting on the territory of Ukrainian, who were perhaps like fed by propaganda or these all like nationalists, let's kill them all, they could have been death squadding easily and eliminating Ukrainian civilians. Why doesn't Mr. Oliver Stone think about that possibility? I wonder. If he doesn't remember, it was those fucking separatists, basically Russia-backed separatists, who shot down fucking airplane, civilian airplane. And now he's trying to spin it as if Ukrainians are those who are killing their own citizens. What in the fuck is in the brain of this moron? This is insane. I'm getting so agitated, so pissed commenting on this video because it's all lies and just garbage. Like as if he watched, I don't know, 10 years of Russian propaganda and now he's spitting this out. It's insanity. I'm sorry for being very emotional during this comment. Yeah.
This is what's horrible about this whole thing, this hypocrisy of America, that they can support such evil, such evil.
It's funny how Oliver Stone doesn't see hypocrisy in what is coming out of his mouth. Because even if we are going to believe that there are a lot of nationalists in Ukraine, in Azov Battalion, which is the famous one and basically the one, there are about 4,000 people. Maybe 5,000 max, but let's say it's 4,000. 4,000 people for a country of 40 million people. It is 0.01%. So 99.99 people of Ukraine are not like that. And so by supporting 99.99%, it is somehow, by Oliver Stone's logic, the fact that America right now supports Ukraine, so they support 99.99 normal people, it is bad. Just let that sink in. Because I can literally show you the photo of Dmitry Rogozin, who is the head of the space agency of Russia, on a nationalist right-wing parade, basically throwing Zikhails into the air. Back in some long time ago, but it is there. I'm going to show it to you. So what does it say about anything?
I would ask you, I'm not sure at this point whether more civilians were killed before 2022 in Donbass than have been killed in this latest.
So we can't talk about this we can't talk about the invasion of Ukraine without considering the full war between Russia and Ukraine since 2014.
That's correct. Absolutely.
It's disgusting that they say this because I was considering Lex Fridman to be a pretty smart person. And yet what he's doing in this interview is being absolutely also very bad as an interviewer because he's never pushing back and he's just accepting all these lies. Either he's himself woefully unprepared for this interview or he shares some really stupid ideas in his head as well. And he shares some ideas with this absolute moron of an Oliver Stone. Because right now, there have been definitely more deaths in, especially civilians, in Ukraine than in all those years. And especially if you consider, like I showed you before, that all the major civilian deaths were caused by most likely Russian forces or separatists in 2014 and 15. There were very, very few deaths of civilians in any other year. And any single death of civilian, of any really person besides dictators like Putin or Lukashenko or whatever, any death of a person is a tragedy. So even those like small number of deaths that were happening afterwards, it is still a tragedy and it shouldn't be understated. And yet what's been happening after the full invasion right now of Russia is true horrors. True horrors. And if Lex Fridman cannot acknowledge this and cannot push back and cannot show to Oliver Stone that that senile moron lost the plot completely, that is really dangerous and bad. Because Lex Fridman has a lot of people watching him and his podcasts and interviews. He's got a responsibility, and in this case, he's completely abandoned basically any sense, any common sense, reason, and just human decency. Because he's talking as if there's something to be justified about this invasion, about what Putin has done. There's none of the justifications to a dictator who wanted to basically reunite USSR, grab back the territories, who wanted to put himself in the fucking history books. There's no justifications for shit like that. And yet they are talking about it as if, whatever. I lost a lot of respect to Lex Fridman after this very, very fucking disgusting interview.
I think the Russian military, of course, I'm not there, and this is speculation. The Russian military has slowed down, and part of that reason is not to keep the civilian corridors open. And I think the Ukrainian military has made it more difficult on purpose, especially some of these battalions that are death squad battalions have gone out of their way to keep the civilians locked into these cities in danger, because it's in their interest to do so.
Honestly, I'm like perplexed and saddened to even listen to this and to comment on this, because this is so disingenuous and disgusting that I kind of believe right now that he is paid by Kremlin, because telling, still pushing this narrative that there are some kind of a death squads, which is nonsense, absolute total garbage and nonsense, that would keep their own civilians inside whatever locked cities instead of providing them corridors, while everything, absolutely everything from actual witnesses of these events who were able to escape speaks to the contrary to this, that it was Russians who actually set up basically camp-like things like filtration camps in Mariupol, for example, and they're blocking the roads, they're shooting at the cars of Ukrainian people who are trying to escape those cities. This is insanity. This is just like, my heart breaks when I hear it, because I know how many people will listen to this, and some of them might believe this garbage because they will believe this figure of Oliver Stone that's supposed to be this kind of a knowledgeable man, which he absolutely is not. Definitely not in this, about this conflict, about this situation. Yeah.
So there's no reason why Ukrainian military, who have killed Ukrainian civilians for years, would change their policies. They would have no compunctions about wiping out, for example, people with white armbands in Bucha.
This is just beyond evil. This is him implying that the murders in Bucha, not Bucha, it's called Bucha, were basically done by Ukrainian military, while there are literally freaking either satellites or some sort of imaging, reconnaissance images of those territories. The photos made prior to Ukrainians even getting to those territories, while Russian army was occupying those territories. And there are those dead civilians on the ground laying exactly in those spots where later Ukrainians will find them. And this is Oliver fucking Stone talking and implying that Ukraine is killing their own people. Wow.
Okay. As to what Putin was thinking at the time, I wondered this, and I still do. I said, okay, so Putin can say, let's say the Ukrainian government wants to now invade Donbass. This is on February 23, and they have artillery. They're peppering the whole place. They're going to go in, and they're going to get Donbass back. What do you do? and you have Russian separatists who are Russian Ukrainians who are going to fight.
It's interesting, right? How he said Russian separatists, correctly said it, but then corrected himself to Ukrainian Russians, right? Just you should notice these things, right? He corrected himself out of actually calling them who they are, to suddenly calling them Ukraine. They're not just Ukrainian. And second, what Russia has to do anything with what's going on in Donbas region of Ukraine. That's a territory of Ukraine. That's Ukrainian people with Ukrainian passports. And if Russia would not support the separatists in those regions, there would be no conflict whatsoever during these 8 years since 2014. Do you know why, by the way, Russia is doing what they're doing exactly in that Donbas region? I'm going to show you one picture. Okay, I'm going to show you two pictures. One of those is the pipelines that go from Russia through Ukraine towards Germany. Russia wants to control those pipelines because this is the main source of money for Russia. And because Ukraine was starting to kind of drift towards Europe and kind of Russia was losing the influence on Ukraine, they wanted to control it. And second of all is the picture of Yuzovsky gas field, which was discovered in 2010, and that was supposed to be one of the largest gas fields around there. And what do you know? It was Royal Dutch Shell who were supposed to kind of explore that gas field, right? And it is located in Donetsk and Kharkiv Oblast, exactly where right now Russia basically created separatist regions and trying to control those territories and trying to basically not allow Ukraine to become independent of Russian gas. Just if you didn't know, if that flew under your radar, here's one more thing that you need to know, that apparently Oliver Stone can't use Google, doesn't know this stuff. Just think about it.
How far do you go in supporting them? Can Russia at this point say, well, we can't help you? You have to get along. You have to be absorbed by the Kiev. You're going to be absorbed by them, and they're not going to give you autonomy, and you have to live with them.
Once again, the person is talking about the regions of Ukraine and about Ukrainian people. And about Ukraine, annexing back its territories? Is he insane?
Of course, there's pressure on Putin from inside his own government.
There is no pressure on Putin from its government, because government is basically just doing everything what Putin says. I think Oliver Stone does not understand whatsoever the structure of Russia and what's going on there. They can't put any pressure on Putin because he owns them all, basically. He made them rich. I'm pretty sure he's got a lot of compromise on all of them. What kind of pressure is he talking about?
He says, okay, we know what the United States' intention is. It's to get rid of me, regime change, and to get another Yeltsin in. That's what they want. And they will go to any ends. They will destroy Ukraine if necessary, but they want regime change in Russia. And then after they do that, of course, they'll go after China. But that's the ultimate policy of the United States. This is a country that has no compunctions about going all the way. And it will use hypocrisy and all the news propaganda in the world to get what it wants. This is the equivalent, frankly, of Germany's goals in World War II, world domination. There's no question in my mind, but we're going about it in our way as opposed to Hitler's way.
I'm just going to remind right here to everybody that basically everyone in the world was still trading with Russia. We're kind of still all right with dealing with Putin even after annexation of Crimea 8 years later. Europe hasn't done anything to cut ties with Russia, to cut ties with the dependency on oil and gas, nothing like that. The renewables weren't developed, the nuclear power plants weren't developed to, again, cut down on the dependency on Russian gas, in particular, if we're talking about Europe, or oil just in general, if we're talking about worldwide. And yet, Oliver Stone is talking as if literally everybody wanted Putin dead basically all these 8 years, which is lies. People actually were dealing with him and with his regime, and nobody cared really about the killing again of the opposition, jailing the opposition candidates, about destruction of the democratic, however you can call democratic, whatever was going on in Russia, institutes and whatnot. Nobody really cared about anything. Now they want Putin gone, dead, regime changed, but it's all happened after 24th of February 2022, not before that. And this is very crucial to point out, because apparently Oliver Stone completely lost the plot and doesn't understand anything, like doesn't hold numbers in his mind, like doesn't hold the timeline of events in his mind, and just spreads lies like this. So yeah, I think I'm gonna end here. It was a very painful kind of video to watch all of this garbage. I'm gonna make more of this as I watch through all the interview. So if you want more discussion about this particular topic, about Ukraine-Russia war, about Russia-Ukraine war, about what Oliver Stone said really terribly wrong, because I've had already this kind of a breakdown for maybe tomorrow or something like that, for the next video, I mean, because yeah, I've seen another clip already that made me really furious and kind of worried, and made me want to create one of those videos. So yeah, please subscribe, and share your thoughts. Have you seen the original video? If not, I obviously urge you to do it yourself. And what do you think about all of this? Okay, subscribe, and till the next one. Bye bye.